right. Good morning, everybody. Today is Tuesday, January 26th, 2016. And this is Before the First Cup with Jules here on UCY.TV. Happy Tuesday, everybody. It is, if you can even believe it, 43 degrees and raining here in upstate New York. Yeah, not sure how that happens. It is melting the little bit of snow that we do have on the ground. So that makes me very happy. Where did we leave off yesterday? We titled the show like I promised we would include the children. The robots are coming. Shh, don't scare the children. Thought that was a pretty good one. We talked about a lot of things. Continued on from Friday's show about small and big data, the Internet of Things and you. I talked about the IBM keynote at the Consumer Electronics 2016 event that Solvener dropped me in regards to some of the partnerships that IBM was making with three new companies to include IBM Watson cognitive abilities in the back ends of their products. They had clothing for wearables. They had Medtronics for the precision medicine and being able to monitor bodily functions 24/7. And they also had SoftBank with their little Peppa robot, being able to give Peppa, which is a social robot, and it can read emotions, all kinds of new intelligence capabilities. We ended the show up looking at the coming of the robots. Pretty much there have been multiple stories now, but it looks like over the last week or two, it has hit high gear about how the robots are going to take all of our jobs. And, you know, we're not just talking like Nano robots or Atlas robots. We're talking about automation, artificial intelligence, software applications utilizing algorithms to be able to make intelligent decisions that at one point in time required people with half a brain in order to do. And they are predicting large job losses between now and 2020. I think they said at least 5 million jobs, potentially up to 7.1 million. And then it gets even worse as we continue forward in time. So I think where we're going to continue on today, because I am a bit behind in my stories, we're going to go on and look at Mad Science Gone Mad and, of course, more automation and Internet of Things. I ran across a story the other day that caught my attention, and you know that these are going to go over big, the consumeristic society that we have. This came out of New Scientist magazine. Smart clothes adapt so you are always the right temperature. So we won't even have to worry about being hot or cold anymore. We won't have to even think about it or do anything about it when you get hot and sweaty, because your clothes will take care of it for you. And guess who funded it? Oh, another ARPA, ARPA-E, Department of Energy. And remember, Department of Energy is the one that presented the synthetic biology report to Congress. They are right smack dab in the middle of all this mad science. So let's read this. Too hot or a touch too cold, working in an office building can be a temperature roller coaster, with the dictatorship of air conditioning systems seeming able to keep people too hot and too cold simultaneously. Ha ha ha. Yeah, it was always too hot in my office. This office, though, I have no control. It's just freaking cold. Today's not too bad, but usually it is. Help is at hand. Researchers from across the U.S., funded by ARPA, ARPA-E, which is the research arm of the Department of Energy, are developing clothes that can change their thermal properties to adapt to the environment and to the wearer's body. And if you could talk about the ultimate in wearables, this would be it. By changing its makeup or shuttling heat to and from the body, the clothing aims to make people comfortable in a wide range of external temperatures. Heat energy can move in three waves: through conduction, whereby atoms in the material pass energy to each other; through convection, whereby high-energy atoms move through the environment; and through radiation, where heat energy moves as electromagnetic waves. Oh, that's got to be healthy, especially right on your body. Clothing can control heat by changing how much radiation it allows to escape the body or how easily air can circulate. Elon Gorstetsky, a team at the University of California, Irvine. It's amazing how the University of California, with good old Janet Napolitano as the head president of the university system, is getting all of these wonderful federal contracts, isn't it? Elon Gortetsky team at the University of California, Irvine is aiming to control radiative heat. We are drawing inspiration from squids, from cephalopods that can do these amazing camouflage displays. He says squids can modify how they reflect visible wavelengths of light using a cocktail of proteins in their skin. And the team is adapting the technique to longer infrared wavelengths that carry heat. We are leveraging that for materials that can regulate the thermal emissions of an object, says Gortetsky, who won't yet reveal his team implements cephalopod-like radiation control. Wow, say that 5 times fast. His team is partnering with U.S. firm Under Armour. Oh, no way. Guess what? This is the company that I couldn't remember their name yesterday. I am pretty 100%. Hold on. Under Armour, I believe, was that company with the clothing that was the first guest on the IBM's Consumer Electronics Show. Absolutely. Under Armour teams up with IBM to get you healthy. So it's Under Armour. So Under Armour is also partnering with the University of California at Irvine for their temperature-controlled clothing based upon cephalopods. How interesting is that? Which makes base layers for sports clothing. Jintu's fans team at Cornell University in Ithaca, New York, is taking a different approach by controlling the circulation of warm and cold air through a network of minuscule tubes embedded into an undershirt. On top, you can wear whatever you want, says Fan. Temperature sensors in the vest monitor the skin. Pumping in warm or cool air is required. It's like a mini air conditioning system next to your body. An alternative approach is to augment the body's own ability to shed heat. To do this, Roy Kornbleu, and his colleagues at a non-profit research company called SRI International are focusing on the body's glabrous. I guess that's another word for hairless. Glabrous. I never heard that before. They're focusing on the body's glabrous or hairless areas. In mammals, these areas act like a car radiator, helping heat to escape from the body. In humans, the palm of the hands and the soles of the feet are particularly important. And anybody who gets hot in bed knows that. I figured that secret out when I was a kid. You get hot, just stick your feet out from underneath the covers and that'll cool you right off. And if that makes you too cold, then just make it 1 foot. And if that's not good enough, then make it a couple toes. It always works for me. We are just augmenting it, he says. Based in Menlo Park, California, his team is building prototype shoes that incorporate a heat pump made from a kind of plastic which is very good at transferring heat. This allows them to pull heat out of the body through the sole of the foot when it is hot and then push in heat when it is cold. Now, I'd be up for trying some of those. That sounds pretty cool. We believe that we can make something that is relatively unobtrusive. You might not even notice that it is a special shoe. Hopefully, within a couple of months, we will have our first visual prototypes out. Clothing that controls heat is not new, but up until now it has only appeared in bulky and uncomfortable garments for the military, aerospace, and emergency services, or in lab experiments. Astronauts wear temperature-regulating suits inside their spacesuits that use liquid to move heat around, but it is heavy. ARPA-E has invested $30 million to make systems that are comfortable to wear in everyday life. Nice to know that the federal government is spending our tax dollars now on coming up with new kinds of clothing. There's a bigger picture, of course, to clothing that adapts to keep us comfortable. It has the potential to save huge amounts of energy. Yeah, now we don't need to even provide you electricity or gas for heating for your home. We'll just give you these government-issued smart clothes to wear, and then we won't have to worry about it anymore. So there's a bigger picture to clothing that adapts to keep us comfortable, has a potential to save huge amounts of energy, and of course, to cure global warming. It doesn't say that, but you know that's what they're thinking. Keeping office temperatures within a tight range creates a big demand on resources, with air conditioning systems accounting for 13% of all energy used in the U.S. Clothes that can adapt and keep us comfortable would allow that control to be loosened. If you can expand that temperature band by a couple of degrees in each direction, and people wearing clothing that controls comfort on an individual level, you can save 1% to 2% of all U.S. energy. That is a huge number. Even a tiny fraction of that would be huge. ARPA-E wants to reduce energy usage in the U.S. That only works if a lot of people are wearing these, says Cornbleu. We want everyone to be able to wear these smart clothes just like you have a smartphone with you. And yeah, now, isn't that great? Again, it's all in the name of climate change and saving energy to get you now to start wearing smart clothing developed by a federal agency that has ARPA in its name. Doesn't sound like such a good idea to me. All right. Now, a few stories that were mentioned yesterday in regards to mad science that we never got to, and we're going to hit those right now. Bridging the bioelectronic divide. And this is the next step beyond smart integration. New efforts aim for fully implantable devices to connect up with 1 million neurons. And I know we've talked many times about the DARPA implant, and that isn't any big surprise to any of the listeners to this show. Seems to be in the news, though. People are all freaking out. DARPA's coming out with this new brain implant. I mean, we already know that they did a live implant on National Geographic TV a few months ago just to show it could be done, all in the name of treating Parkinson's this time. DARPA was working on it for PTSD and their Super Soldier project, but all in the name of PTSD and curing injured soldiers. A new DARPA program aims to develop an implantable neuro device. This was from the 19th, by the way, so this was about a week ago. An implantable neuro device able to provide unprecedented signal resolution and data transfer bandwidth between the human brain and the digital world. Now, those are really scary terms, considering those are terms that I use in networking. And now we're talking about an interface to the human brain. The interface would serve as a translator, converting between the electrochemical language used by neurons in the brain and ones and zeros that constitute the language of information technology. The goal is to achieve this communication link in a biocompatible device no larger than 1 cubic centimeter in size, roughly the volume of 2 nickels stacked back to back. The program, called Neuroengineering System Design, or NESD for short, stands to dramatically enhance research capabilities in neurotechnology and provide a foundation for new therapies. Yes, it's always in the name of new therapies. Today's best brain-computer interface systems are like 2 supercomputers trying to talk to each other using an old 300 baud modem, says Philip Elvelda, the NESD program manager. Imagine, just imagine, as again he evilly rubs his hands together, what will become possible when we upgrade our tools to really open the channel between the human brain and modern electronics. Yeah, just imagine Kurzweil. I just can't even, I'm sure he's in there probably like spit dripping down his chin as he's watching this. This is just really horrifying to me. Among the program's potential applications are devices that could compensate for deficits in sight and hearing by feeding digital auditory or visual information to the brain at a resolution and experiential quality far higher than is possible with current technology. Neural interfaces currently approved for humans use squeeze. It doesn't make sense. For humans, squeeze a tremendous amount of information through just 100 channels, with each channel aggregating signals from tens of thousands of neurons at a time. The result is noisy and imprecise, but in contrast, this NESD program aims to develop systems that can communicate clearly and individually with any of up to 1 million neurons in any given region of the brain. Achieving the program's ambitious goals and ensuring that the envisioned devices will have the potential to be practical outside of a research setting will require integrated breakthroughs across numerous disciplines, including neuroscience, synthetic biology, low-power electronics, photonics, medical device packaging and manufacturing, systems engineering, and clinical testing. And by the way, this article is straight from the demon's mouth from DARPA.mil. In addition to the program's hardware challenges, NESD researchers will be required to develop advanced mathematical and neurocomputational techniques to first transcode high-definition sensory information between electronic and cortical neuron representations, and then compress and represent those data with minimal loss of fidelity and functionality. So basically, it's like doing what we do today for HD video. You do transcoding and then you do compression. Right now, they're using MP4. Wonder if it's going to be something similar for the human brain. I mean, who knows? It might be interesting to see, but I'm telling you, I'm not lining up for one of these. To accelerate, and yes, just what we need, to accelerate the integrative process, the NESD aims to recruit a diverse roster of leading industry stakeholders willing to offer state-of-the-art prototyping and manufacturing services and intellectual property to the NESD researchers on a pre-competitive basis. So they're going to pull in all of the tech companies you watch and the medical companies and anything else they listed here, manufacturing, systems engineering, synthetic biology. Oh, it'll be a one big, happy, disgusting orgy full of people. And in the later phases of the program, these partners could help then transition the resulting technologies into research and commercial application spaces. And that is how they're doing this. They use tax dollars to help fund these projects. They get these commercial entities, corporations, to come in and say, hey, we got all this money here. Send us some of your best guys. Start doing the research, and we're going to give you first dibs on being able to then commercialize this technology once it's developed on the taxpayer dime, mind you, so you can make bazillions of dollars enslaving the population. Good job there, federal government. Anyway, in later phases, these partners could help transition the resulting technologies into research and commercial application spaces. To familiarize potential participants with the technical objectives of NESD, DARPA is hosting a Proposers Day meeting that runs Tuesday and Wednesday, February 2nd and 3rd, 2016 in Arlington, Virginia. Then they give the links to the special notice announcing the Proposers Day, as well as a link to details about the industry group that'll be supporting their efforts. DARPA anticipates an investment of up to $60 million now for this brain implant over the next 4 years. NESD is part of a broader portfolio of programs within DARPA that supports, guess who it supports? President Obama's Brain Initiative. Oh, good thing that this brain initiative is blowing tax dollars like a drunken sailor for brain implants. That's the end of that one. It's got to make you feel all warm and fuzzy in your brain. I know it does me. All right, now here's the other one I mentioned right at the end of the show. Nanobot micromotors deliver medical payload in living creatures for the first time. This is from January 21st. Again, University of California, researchers working at the University of California, San Diego this time, have claimed a world's first in proving that artificial microscopic machines can travel inside a living creature and deliver the medicinal payload without, so they say, any detrimental effects. I'd like to know how long the test went for them to determine that there were no detrimental effects. Using micromotor-powered nanobots propelled by gas bubbles made from a reaction with the contents of the stomach in which they were deposited, through our food. These miniature machines have been successfully deployed in the body of a live mouse. The and I don't even know how to say this, the Picayune, Picayune, Pica's tiny, Picuan, Picayune, 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 Picayune. The Picayune robots used in the research were tubular, about 20 micrometers long and 5 micrometers in diameter, coated in zinc. And once the mouse ingested these tiny tubes and they reached the stomach, this is so horrifying, the zinc reacted with the hydrochloric acid in the digestive juices to produce bubbles of hydrogen, which then propelled the nanobots along like miniature rockets. Wow. Reaching speeds of up to 60 micrometers per second, the nanobots headed outwards toward the stomach lining, where they then embedded themselves, dissolved, and delivered nanoparticle compounds directly into the gut tissue. According to the researchers, all of the nanobots deployed in the stomach of the mouse, those that reached the stomach walls remained attached to the lining for a full 12 hours after ingestion, delivering their payload and thereby proving their effectiveness and robust nature. Further, after the mouse was eventually euthanized and the stomach was dissected and examined, the presence of the nanobots also showed no signs of raised toxicity levels or damaged tissue. According to the researchers, this was in line with their expectation, particularly given that zinc is effective also as a multi-purpose nutrient. Oh, here, Johnny, take your zinc supplement. Oh, this is horrifying. While nanobots have been used before on organic tissue, such as in the destruction of the hepatitis C virus, and still others have been designed to be used for propelled using external forces within a living creature. And yeah, they were showing them using magnetism, I was reading just recently. University of California micro machines are the very first self-propelled nanoparticle delivering nanobots ever. And it is this fact that makes the research team believe that its success so far merits further research and cites the fact that this is now the beginning of a proven method to deliver targeted drug administration. Now remember, the two places where in our research we discovered were the best ways to get nanotechnology into the bloodstream were through the gut, as well as through intranasally in the nasal cavity. We got a story about that one next. For everyone else, this is exciting technology that may well help to medically treat human beings in the not-too-distant future. Of course, this is early days in this research, and a plethora of continuously successful tests will need to be run before it can even be considered by the likes of the U.S. Food and Drug Administration to approve its use in people. But this step and these first steps are vital to what might one day be a commonplace, targeted, and safe alternative to traditional high-dose medications. No announcement has yet been made regarding further tests or the possibility of human-based trials. The research was published in the Journal of ACS Nano. So how lovely is that? All right, so check this out. That is through the stomach. Here's a new one. Newly discovered type of sound waves allows for inhalable vaccines. What? Yes, inhalable. We knew this was coming, and I think they've been doing this for a while, just without our knowledge. And we're going to look at some of the craziness that's going on right now. I don't know, a few crazy things. We looked at Zika, some other things spreading, and it seems like that story in the Ukraine I mentioned yesterday has gotten out all over now, so we're going to have to look at that one. No more needles, it says. Whoop, whoop. Yeah. All we got to do now is make vaccines with no needles so people aren't afraid anymore. Put it in your food and put it in your inhaler. Australian researchers, and remember, in Australia is where they also discovered that ultrasound opens up that blood-brain barrier to allow for nanotechnology. So interesting that they're still doing research on sound waves and how to get biomedical products into the brain. Australian researchers have developed a new form of hybridized sound wave, the first in 50 years, and it opens up new possibilities for stem cell treatments. Yay! The waves are gentle enough to be used in biomedical applications and to manipulate stem cells in non-disruptive ways. The new hybrid sound waves are called surface reflected bulk waves, quote unquote, and combine two existing types. Bulk waves, think of a carpet being shaken from one end affecting the whole of the material, and surface waves, think of waves rolling across the surface of the ocean without really affecting the depths underneath. By mixing these two types together, a powerful wave with high frequencies but low amplitudes is produced. And that means the drugs and vaccines can be delivered directly to the body through a nebulizer device. Yes, good old nebulizers. In the case of the test that scientists have already carried out, this means that a fine mist inhaled into the lungs can be utilized. It is basically yelling at a liquid, so it vibrates, breaking it down into vapor, says one of the team. And while surface acoustic waves have already been used to pump and mix liquids at very small scales, until now the process has been a very slow one. As the energy of the waves is increased, the device applying the waves becomes unusable. The addition of the bulk waves, though, stabilizes the procedure again and means a higher level of power can be reached. We have used these new sound waves to slash the time required for inhaling vaccines through a nebulizing device from 30 minutes to as little as 30 seconds. But our work also opens up the possibility of using stem cells more efficiently to treat lung disease, enabling us to nebulize stem cells straight into a specific site within the lung to repair damaged tissue. This is a real game changer for stem cell treatments in the lungs. Now, I gotta say, pretty interesting, especially if it were your own stem cells that could go in and repair some sort of damage or lung cancer. But on the other hand, every one of these technologies that they're like, oh, first time ever we've discovered that we can, cross this barrier or hack the body this way or that. You got to remember the people who have their hands on this technology, it's not always going to be used for good. This new device, of course, more aptly called the Hydra, yes, the Hydra, has been built to take advantage of these new surface reflective bulk waves. How interesting, too. It's using sound and pulse waves. There's all kinds of research going into using waves to do things now, especially from DARPA and the Mad Science Department. It converts electricity passing through a piezoelectric chip into vibrating sound waves, waves that are then used to break the liquid drugs into a spray. Hydra, in turn, improves the effectiveness of the advanced respite nebulizer already in use at the Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology, a machine that's capable of doing everything from giving a precise dose of asthma drugs to patients to providing vaccine-free, needle-free vaccinations for infants. And the combination of surface and bulk waves mean that they work in harmony and produce a much more powerful wave. The work has been published in the Journal of Advanced Materials. Now think about how wonderful this will be for them to put some sort of pathogen into, perhaps the air, and then break it down into spray droplets so it is easily inhaled by people on the ground. I don't know, just postulating there, but sounds pretty damn scary to me. All right, well, where do we go from here? Let's take a look at some of, now that we've been talking about pathogens, we have this apparent Zika virus spreading everywhere. And the genetically modified mosquitoes. And to me, there still seems to be a very strong black Sharpie line between the release of genetically modified mosquitoes from Oxitec and this mega outbreak that now is spreading at potential epidemic proportions. I found a website called gmeducation.org. It's highly recommended. Check it out. They have some really good stuff out here. But there's a section under Food and Health titled Mosquito Madness, talking about the genetically modified mosquitoes. Let's read this. Genetically modified mosquitoes have been released in several countries, and we were aware of that, most recently being Brazil. And now they're talking because of Zika, maybe we should start genetically modifying mosquitoes to kill the Zika mosquitoes. Yes, let's create another one and let it loose into the environment. Despite public concern and scientific criticism, more releases are actually being planned. Scientists, politicians, and the public have already raised alarm about the mosquitoes, which it is claimed have been engineered to stop the spread of dengue fever. And yeah, those were the ones they released in Brazil right before the Zika outbreak. Oxitec, an Oxfordshire-based company with strong links to the biotech giant Syngenta, and now they've also been purchased by Interexon, is behind the GM mosquito program. It argues that its insects are quote-unquote biologically contained as they are programmed to die. So the usual rules for open releases of GMOs do not apply. Now, that's just absolutely insane. Even though they die, doesn't mean that these creatures can't mutate, because I would say that that would be probably one of the biggest concerns. And, they're looking now to release those Zika mosquitoes, and they're talking about these dengue mosquitoes in Florida again. Incredibly, this argument that the fact that the mosquitoes die has been used to bypass regulations in the Cayman Islands, Brazil, and Malaysia. And now Oxitec is planning more releases in Brazil and wants to add Panama, India, Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, the Philippines, Costa Rica, Trinidad, Tobago, and Florida in the United States to its portfolio. But scientists at the Max Planck Institute in Germany, good old Germany has decided to shut down all their nuclear reactors. Kind of gets it, Germany. Yeah, good old Germany, Max Planck's Institute has criticized the science behind these releases. They report that there are, quote, deficits in the scientific quantity of regulatory documents and a general absence of accurate experimental descriptions available before the releases start, unquote. I would second that opinion. Oxitec says that it has used genetic engineering to reduce the ability of the dengue fever-carrying Aedes aegypti mosquito to reproduce. Altered males are fed an antibiotic, good old tetracycline, the one that you're not supposed to be in the sun with, in the lab, and then introduce them into the wild where they mate with the wild females, and their offspring need tetracycline to develop, but are supposed to be unable to find it, and so they die, thereby reducing the population. This is an approach which critics believe is deeply flawed. Dr. Helen Wallace from GeneWatch UK points to a confidential Oxitec document with trial data showing that 15% of the offspring of the genetically modified mosquitoes will survive with low levels of tetracycline in the environment. And yeah, remember, all these drugs that we take end up in the sewer system. There are always remnants of drugs that are consumed, that are passed out of the body. This is possible because the antibiotics are also widely used in agriculture as well and is present in the sewage, that's what I said, as in industrially farmed chicken and other meats. Mosquitoes carrying dengue fever are known to breed in environments contaminated with sewage, including septic tanks. Whoa, whoops. Big oops there. The ecological implications of GM mosquitoes surviving and breeding are also unknown, says Dr. Wallace, and even in the absence of tetracycline contamination, GM mosquitoes can survive in the laboratory at rates found around 3%. In the field, this would translate into large numbers of survivors, given that the continual release of millions of GM mosquitoes would be needed to control dengue. Oxitec itself admits that, as well as the GM male mosquitoes, the GM females may have been released accidentally. Whoops. And these are the biting form of the insect, which pass on disease. The company still has not dealt convincingly with the medical consequences of a genetically modified female mosquito biting people, and we talked about this the other day. Opposition to Oxitec's plans is emerging. There were questions in a study that we read about whether or not a female mosquito that was genetically modified bit a human, if it could pass that genetically modified RNA onto the human. And Oxitec's response to that was, don't worry about it because there will be no genetically modified female mosquitoes. But now we just find out that, oops, there have been females accidentally released as well. Globally, there are over 100 million cases of dengue infection a year, with the numbers spreading. However, most people recover within 2 weeks of managing their symptoms by taking paracetamol and drinking plenty of fluids as well as resting. In some cases, dengue can develop into a potentially fatal dengue hemorrhagic fever and dengue shock syndrome. However, globally, dengue fever causes a relatively small number, estimated 20,000 deaths annually. Oxitec argues that these deaths justify its GM mosquitoes, and now, of course, the Zika will as well. But there are alternatives in the pipeline. Sanofi, Sanofi, a Paris-based drug firm, and I just ran into them somewhere as well, has now invested 350 million euros into a factory to make a new dengue vaccine, which will be available in 2015. And maybe that's where we just read about them, because they just released the very first dengue vaccine, of course. The GM mosquitoes have not been adequately scrutinized and are arguably based on a flawed concept. Overall, Oxitec's program represents an unregulated release of a genetically modified organism into the environment with no public consultation on the potential risks and ding-ding-ding, no informed consent given by national or state governments, except in New York State, where they released the Oxitec moth. Ultimately, the Oxitec approach might prove valuable, but at the moment, it looks like a quote-unquote get-rich-quick scheme that is running rings around the shambolic political and regulatory system. Yes, and is going to make a joke of our environment. I wouldn't doubt that these mosquitoes could potentially pass things on to humans. Keep an eyeball on that, because that's something that worries me considerably. And what worries me even more, we discussed this quite a long time ago when they first started digging up this whole new cache of Black Plague skeletons that they found in the UK. They're like, wow, look at this. We're going to dig up all these Black Plague skeletons that were buried in a pit, and we're going to use them for... And originally they're like, oh, they're going to use them for research. And when I read that, I was like, oh my God, here we go. Mad science gone mad in the lab. And they're like, no, we're not going to do that. Well, guess what? Phys.org, January 22nd. The hideout of the Black Death, historical pathogens, survives for more than 4 centuries in Europe. Now I'm going to tell you, I posted this on my Before the First Cup page last week, and I think that's probably the most activity, the most comments, the most views I've ever seen on that page, because people went crazy over this. Check this out. Black Death, mid-14th century plague, is undoubtedly the most famous historical pandemic. Within only 5 years, it killed 30 to 50% of the entire European population. And unfortunately, it didn't stop there. Plague resurged throughout Europe, leading to a continued high mortality and social unrest over the next 3 centuries. With its nearly worldwide distribution today, and we did see a few pop up in the southwest and a little bit north to that, Arizona and that, Montana, in some of the camps in the woods up there, in squirrels and rodents. With its nearly worldwide distribution today, it is surprising that the once omnipresent threat of plague is all but absent now in Western Europe. Plague's abrupt disappearance from Europe leaves us with many unanswered questions about the disease's history. Where did the outbreak begin? Where was the plague hiding between outbreaks? What would cause a resurgence of this dreaded plague? Archaeology, of course, holds many of those answers to these questions if you know where to look for clues. And an international team of scientists, again led by members of where? Oh, the Max Planck Institute. This is the Institute for the Science of Human History in Jena, Germany, has taken one important step forward to understand the European plagues of our not-so-distant past. In the online journal of eLife, they report the reconstruction of, yes, I said it, they report the reconstruction of complete pathogen genomes from victims of the Great Plague of Marseille, which was 1720 to 1722, which is conventionally assumed to be the last outbreak of the medieval plague in Europe. Using teeth from plague pits in Marseille, the team was able to access tiny fragments of DNA that had been preserved for hundreds of years. Quote, we face a significant challenge in reconstructing these ancient genomes, comments computational analyst Alexander Herbig. But to our surprise, the 18th century plague seems to be a form that is no longer circulating, and it descends directly from the disease that entered Europe during the Black Death several centuries earlier. So what a great freaking idea. It no longer exists and it's no longer circulating. So let's take the DNA out of the teeth of these ancient skeletons and reconstruct the genome of the Black Plague. Hey, why not? Being distinct from all other modern forms of plague, the scientists believe that they now have identified an extinct form of the disease. Woohoo! Kristen Bowes, a leading author of the publication, cautions that the geographical source of the disease cannot be yet identified. Marseille was a big hub of trade in the Mediterranean, so the Great Plague of Marseille could have been imported from any number of places by ship or cargo. But she concedes that it equally could have been close to home. Our results suggest that the disease was hiding somewhere in Europe for several hundred years. It is a chilling thought that plague might once have been hiding right around the corner throughout all of Europe, living in a host which is not yet known to us, explains Johann Kraus, director of the Department of Archaeogenics at the Max Planck Institute in Jena. And he adds, future work might help us to identify the mysterious host species, its range, and the reason for its disappearance. So how awesome is that? We have now reconstructed the long since dead Black Plague that ravaged Europe in the 1700s. And we got it in a lab somewhere at Max Planck Institute in Germany. So now we run across two disturbing stories. And I'm going to read this because this one seems to be hitting headlines today. It came out actually on Friday, and I mentioned it yesterday. This is on a website that I verified is legit. It is Donetsk News out of the Ukraine, titled Deadly Virus Leaked from U.S. Laboratory in Donbass. And this is per the DPR, Army and Intelligence. And they actually have the Army General's news brief. He's sitting at a table giving an official news brief, and he talks about this at the end of that news brief. Says more than 20 Ukrainian soldiers have died and over 200 soldiers are hospitalized in a short period of time because of a new and deadly virus which is immune to all medicines. Donetsk People's Republic intelligence has reported that the Californian flu, and I did a quick search on Californian flu yesterday on Google. I came up with nothing. So if this is some lab creation or if this is some sort of fabricated story, I'm not so sure. But I'm going to tell you that this website that the story is on and the group that are announcing this have been verified as being legit, which is what makes me a little bit nervous. And of course, the U.S. doing secret experiments on biopathogens, that's not too far of a stretch. But it has reported that the Californian flu is leaked from the same place where research of this virus has been carried out. The laboratory is located near the city of Kharkov, Kharkov, and it's base for the U.S. military experts. Information from threatening epidemic is announced by Vice Commander of the Donetsk Army, Edwan Basurin, and that's in the video below that, of course, can't really play it because he's speaking Ukrainian or Russian, whatever their language is. I would assume that it's probably Russian down there. The leak of the deadly virus on the Ukrainian side was published for the first time December 1st, 2016. Quote, according to medical personnel of the AFU units, which are the Ukrainian troops, there was a recorded mass disease among the Ukrainian military personnel in the field. Physicians recorded the unknown virus as a result of which the infected could get a high fever, which cannot be subdued by any medicines, and in the 2 days there comes a fatal outcome. Thus far from the virus, there have died more than 20 servicemen, what is carefully shielded by the commandment of the AFU from the public, says Basurin in a daily situation report. Outbreak of the deadly virus then continues, and on Friday, January 22nd, 2016, Vice Commander of the AFU Ukrainian troop unit told new information to the public about the epidemic. Now remember, I'm reading a translation here. Quote, we keep registering new facts of the growing epidemic of acute respiratory infections among Ukrainian military. Just since the beginning of this week, there have been more than 200 Ukrainian military that have taken to civilian and military hospitals of Kharkov and this one's going to be hard, Dnepropetrovsk, Dnepropetrovsk. That's how you spell it. It is important to repeat that the DPR intelligence previously reported the research being carried out in a private laboratory in the locality of Selkirskov, 30 miles away from the city of Kharkov, and involved U.S. military experts. According to our information, it is there where the deadly California flu strain leaked from, says Basurin via the Dondi news agency. It is also published in the official DPR reports of their military defense situation reports daily, and the general is on video in both of those reports giving a situation report as to what's going on. So I'm going to tell you, it kind of frightened me. I really was hoping for a minute that this site might have been fake, but it's not. So let's continue, though. So I see Prepper Chick then in her backyard post a story yesterday. This is out of Indianapolis. This is from January 24th. So this is from 2 days ago. Inmate dies from viral outbreak at Putnamville Correctional Facility in Indianapolis. One inmate at Putnamville Correctional Facility has died after a viral outbreak. It says 18 patients began to show flu or pneumonia-like symptoms at the beginning of the week. They were admitted to an observation unit as part of the Indiana Department of Corrections Influenza Control Plan. 9 have since been sent to the Terre Haute Regional Hospital after their symptoms got worse, and one of those patients now has died as of last Friday. Currently, there are now 25 patients under observation. 11 are at the facility's healthcare unit. 14 of them have been transferred to the hospital's detention center, and 4 have been now admitted to their ICU unit. Authorities say that safety precautions are being taken, including isolation, bleaching of the units, and wearing masks. 75 air handling filters have also been replaced. The Indiana State Department of Health says that they are working closely with the Department of Corrections, local health officials, and the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and they are trying to identify the source of the exposure. Of course, visitation at the facility has been canceled until further notice. So, it's not like they haven't tried mad science experiments on inmates before. It isn't like they haven't accidentally released pathogens out of secret labs before or been working on secret pathogens without people knowing. Just saying, connecting a couple dotted lines there. We got plague in Germany. We got California flu virus that's like putting people out of commission pretty damn quick in Ukraine. And now we have some mysterious flu in a prison in Indiana. Zika virus going absolutely crazy. And of course, it can eventually all be named as climate change as the cause. All right, here's another one talking about the brain and all these mysterious brain-eating diseases, this pandemic of Alzheimer's-like disease. Story came out of ScienceAlert.com. January 21st, exposure to algae toxin could increase the risk of Alzheimer's-like illness. Oh, really? Yes, really. Paper published today suggests that chronic exposure to an environmental toxin may increase the risk of neurodegenerative illnesses. For the very first time, researchers have shown that feeding vervet monkeys a toxin produced by blue-green algae results in protein deposits in the brain, consistent with those seen in human Alzheimer's. Neurodegenerative diseases is an umbrella term which includes Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and motor neuron disease. The causes remain largely unknown. Yeah, well, the fact that we also discovered that the Alzheimer's-like plaques and what the proteins behind them can be passed through blood transfusions and dental work as well. And also potentially BSE from cows can be passed through milk and potentially eating the beef, we discovered also. Owing its role to an unusual illness suffered by Chamaroo villagers on the Pacific island of Guam, researchers have begun investigating an algal toxin called BMAA for more than 40 years. The Chamo's diet was contaminated with BMAA, and they suffered from dementia, as well as from combinations of symptoms typical of Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and motor neuron disease. In a study published in the Royal Society Proceedings, researchers fed vervet monkeys fruit, some with the BMAA toxin, some with a placebo, and some with an unknown inhibitor of BMAA, which is an amino acid called L-serine. After 140 days, they detected protein tangles and plaques, which is a hallmark of neurodegenerative disease, in the brain tissues of all the animals fed BMAA, but not in the placebo animals. So how horrifying is that? Some algae toxin in the water that now we're seeing all these toxic algae all over the coast over the last few years. And they're finding a direct connection between these neurotoxins and Alzheimer's plaques in brains. And I mean, it was just 140 days. So put on a seatbelt for that one. The story goes on for quite a while. It says, in the meantime, the best advice is to take precautions, reduce your risk to BMAA, exposure to BMAA, by staying away from green, smelly algae blooms. Don't drink the water, and take heed of warning signs. And because we don't even know BMAA can cause disease yet, and we don't have a cure, there's so much more work to do. How do we even know if it's in our water? How do we know that they're filtering it out? We don't. All right, last but not least, if I can squeeze it in the last 2 minutes, Discover Magazine released a story back in September of 2015, and I was a little surprised by this. Insanity virus research advances. The first human trials are underway to test whether antibody therapy can treat schizophrenia and multiple sclerosis. Yeah, they're planning on coming up with a vaccine after we just discover that they are working on being able to diagnose schizophrenia through voice patterns. In 2010, Discover reported on a theory that brain diseases such as multiple sclerosis and schizophrenia might have a common source, i.e., a virus. Researchers have now found mounting evidence that we carry this virus in our DNA, like the genes for left-handedness. And what's more, infections such as influenza picked up from our environment in early life might be the trigger for these diseases. What? Influenza? And that we're carrying insanity in our DNA? Oh, we might have to save this one to kick it off tomorrow. This is pretty insane. And now let's come up with some sort of DNA vaccine that they're already kicking off into human trials. Oh, this is crazy. And of course, this page now is kind of stuck right in the middle. Well, we might have to leave it at that one. I don't know. Can we go? Can we go? Stop spinning. Or I might have to sing for the end of the show. Here we go. Oh. Yeah, well, anyway, I think we're going to have to hit this one tomorrow because this is a little bit more than we can get into in the last 30 seconds of the show. If you can even believe it, though, it is the last 30 seconds of the show, man. Did that fly? Make sure you stick around, though, guys, because guess what? It's Tuesday. We already have snuck into the week a little bit. We have Mr. Ken Blanche live up next with Post Ignorance, and then live tonight at 7, Ron with Game On. At 8 p.m. Eastern, Our Interesting Times with Tim Kelly. At 9, live, the boys from Primer Time, Michael and Nick. At 10, this week's Geoengineering Watch with Mr. Dane Wigington. And at 11, Anti-Media Radio with Mr. S.M. Gibson. So, all right, guys, you make sure that you have a kick-ass, awesome Tuesday. Hope the snow is melting, and I will catch up with you tomorrow. Everybody take care.